welcome to day 2 of ITVFest panels. My name is Sib Law. I am the chair of the International Academy of Web Television. We are glad you are here. I also have the honor of hosting this panel and one later this afternoon with these fine people who you'll get to know in just a minute. I've got a couple of quick announcements. If you are going to be on the red carpet tonight, quick announcement that the red carpet starts around 7:15, which is about 45 minutes earlier than announced. For those of you here in the tent, there are beverages in the back and snacks as well. If you're at home, go to your own pantry or whatever you need to do. Now's the time. Okay, now that we've done that, we can start the panel. Today we're here to talk about the great merging, Teleweb and Weblevision. We have a fabulous group of people here who know a lot about this stuff. I can't wait to learn. So let's start at this end. Would you tell us who you are, why you're involved in this industry, or what you do in this industry, and then how this convergence thing impacts you?
My name is Dana Kunzekoff. I'm a film and television producer in New York City, based in New York City. And web conversions, for me, I do a lot of broadcast network work, and for a decade now, more than a decade, we've been saying this is the future, and web convergence is here, and we're doing it, and some people are doing it really, really well, and some people haven't really fit into it yet, but that's one of the reasons why I'm here.
My name is AJ Tesler. I'm the original founder of this festival. I started out in LA about 8 years ago. I am now the head of production for Jash, which is a digital studio and production company featuring creative contributions from Sarah Silverman, Michael Cera, Tim and Eric, Reggie Watts, amongst others. I've also produced television for VH1, MTV, History Channel, a handful of others. And web convergence is important to me because I look at where you can get the most amount of people to see the content that you're making, because making content in a vacuum is no fun, and web convergence is really how you're going to get the bigger audience at this point in the game.
My name is Mike Rotman. I originally started in TV about 20 years ago, written for kind of every single network out there. I used to write for Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher and South Park and The Simple Life. Did some reality shows for Fox that I produced that I don't like to talk about. And so I left TV about 5-6 years ago. I always dabbled in online, started my own basically online live production studio. Literally in my garage, did a 5-camera studio sort of before anybody else was doing that sort of live online. So did that new media. Now I'm doing a lot more production as well. We're sort of a full-fledged production company called Streaming Garage. We just sold a show to Nerdist, their YouTube channel. We did a convergence, I guess you could say, project with Will Smith's company for After Earth, where we developed a web presence for them, a web series, 9-part web series that I produced and directed for them, through my company. And convergence is important. To me, in the end, there's no more TV, there's no more web, it's just content. Whether you're watching my live shows on your iPad or your Roku box or your computer, you're also watching an NBC show, maybe through Hulu, on your iPad, on your phone. It's all, at this point, to me, it's all the same. It's just budgets are a little different, obviously. But I don't see too much of a difference in terms of what everything is. So to me, the convergence is everything's kind of merging together in the next few years.
Heyo, my name is Dan Milano. I used to be at jibjab.com. I was kind of their social media guy and a writer in Venice, California. And I was doing my own sketch comedy out in Hollywood for like 5 years or so. And then I moved up to New York, and for a year and a half, I was ABC News' social media editor, which meant a lot of sharing their live streaming content and working with web-only content. And then for the last 3 months, I've been jumping on board with DailyMotion.com, and I am now their partnership manager. I'm helping get new people on board, Dailymotion's wide variety of content, and also running their social media channels as well. And for me, a lot of what convergence is means that finally we have a way to shape our own entertainment. With a lot of the entertainment moving its way onto the web, who is actually watching what and who is saying about what means more than ever. We were kind of the audience itself was a silent partner in television and movies, only speaking with their ad money. And now there are so many ways to cut it. you can see right away if something's working, if something's not working, and what the people actually want.
That's awesome. So creators, if you're here, talk to Dan afterwards. So if you subscribe to any publications in this industry or a multitude of publications, about every week and a half you'll see a headline that says, "Is Netflix killing TV?" What do you guys think?
Netflix is TV. That's how I see it. Netflix is the same as HBO or Showtime. It's a new network, and they're doing great. And here's what I saw. I started in TV in the early 90s where sort of creatives ran it. And then towards the mid-late 90s, MBAs sort of came in and started being the development guys.
He said MBAs, not
MBAs.
the NBA,
No,
just
not
in
the
case
NBA.
anybody misunderstood that.
MBAs, business guys. And TV started to change. That's how I saw it. And it was more business, more what do the advertisers want, less of the creative, a lot more notes started coming in. To me, that started killing the creativity of TV. And I see Netflix, Showtime, HBO sort of veering away from that and letting the creator and the showrunner do their creative, and that's, to me, why the shows are better. So I applaud Netflix for being a great... I mean, in the end, like House of Cards, they were going to TV with it, and whoever the higher bidder was, and Netflix gave the highest bid and bought it out, and they did a great job with it.
Yeah, and I think you look at the broadcast networks and the massive audiences that they had early on, and then cable showed up and fragmented the audience a little bit more, and then internet and web television started showing up, and it started fragmenting the audience a little bit more. And now there's Netflixes and Amazons and Hulus that are all paying for original content, and Microsoft Xbox and Yahoo and YouTube as well that are fragmenting the audience even further. So you have whether it's notes that have caused that fragmentation or just the sheer mass of content that's available to an audience at this point, one way or the other, it's all coming to you the same way at this point.
And to be fair, with Netflix, there's still a creative input from the executives. The levels and the layers are just different. They're just a lot less. If you're doing an NBC show or CBS show, you have so many layers that you have to get through if you are a creator on those networks, between the marketing people that weigh in, the DVD packagers that weigh in, the social media departments that weigh in. But when you get to some of these cable channels like a Netflix, the levels are different. You really have one other creative voice. Maybe one is probably not true. Maybe there's two, but there's not 37. There's just not that many. But the interesting thing that's happening with something like Netflix, let's talk about House of Cards, where they aired them all at once, so you could sit there and binge watch. The difference in broadcast is broadcast now has this phenomenon of live tweeting. So there are many writers, supervising producers in the broadcast world that are influenced by their audience, not the ratings, by what their audiences are saying as they live tweet a show. And that's changing what's happening on broadcast, whereas Netflix, it's all about once it's over, then you can pass judgment,
Right.
but they're not changing.
And it's so much harder to have a conversation around a whole season of Netflix. Like, you don't know where to jump in. On a week-by-week show, the whole audience can gather throughout that week and talk on Reddit and Twitter about what happened this week. But with Netflix, I don't know where my friends are in Orange is the New Black, and it's all fantastic and award-winning and certainly great, but, is Netflix killing TV? Well, TV is the weekly conversation. Netflix is did you spend a whole weekend binge watching so we can talk about this yet? The conversation's hard to have.
I think the water cooler conversation is gone. That just doesn't happen anymore every day. So we used to, for decades, we had to have patience. We'd have to watch a show, and then wait a week, and then watch the second episode, and then wait a week, and that was water cooler
I don't think
conversation.
it's gone. I think it's just splitting now, and you've got two types of conversation to have.
I think it's interesting to see the audience relationship with the content, though. When you're talking about binge watching on something like Netflix, there is no season anymore. But the audience gets to watch it when they want to watch it, and on demand really is what convergence is about. Is I want to watch something when I want to watch it. That's why there's all these discussions with like CBS and Time Warner. We saw them trying to fragment away from Time Warner a little bit, because ultimately what we're going to be able to do is watch. I only want to watch FX and Showtime and a little bit of the broadcast networks. So at some point, I'm going to be able to just do that. That's farther down the line because there are all these legacy deals that keep us from doing that. But if binge watching is what the audience is doing, then it feels disingenuous to say you can't watch this until we tell you can watch it. Some of that obviously is because of the deals they have to structure and how the royalties work with the unions and all of that stuff. But at some point, the content has to be delivered to the audience the way the audience wants it.
So does this mean we're going to see just a full-on cutting of the cord, the cable cord, no longer subscribing to cable, and we're just gonna have our Netflix subscription?
I think what cable needs to do is what everybody's been asking since the late 70s. Can I just watch a network? I don't want the whole thing. I watch MLB Network, otherwise I'm watching everything else on Netflix pretty much. Or, MeTV, which shows like old Newhart episodes. Eventually cable's got to wisen up and offer that. And I think, kill the bundle. Why not? I mean, why can't I buy MLB package, just the MLB network itself for $10 a month instead of having to pay $100 for DirecTV?
Yeah, the a la carte thing, I mean, obviously, I don't know if you guys are aware of what the bundling is, but there's companies like Viacom that have 12 different channels. They bundle them together. They get a higher rate from the distributors in order to actually be able to make all the shows on their premium network. So that way, their lesser networks, the Ovations of the world, they don't need to spend that much money on, but they still get paid because that's going to bring in some amount of audience that is valuable to the distributor. And so bundling has always been the way that cable TV has worked, and right now we're starting the conversation where that is starting to pull apart. There's still a lot of money at stake, and so that bundle is still holding itself together. But I 100% agree that at some point you're going to be able to just watch what you want to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Roku box, and our channel's on Roku, and we got like 200,000 subscribers just on, we're one of the top web networks. But on that also, I can watch MSNBC News. I can watch CNBC. Some of it's live, some of it's not, but eventually, there's going to be other networks that just put their channel on a Roku box or similar, and I can just punch that up, and that seems to where it's going. I mean, you just look at Roku. When I got it 3 years ago, there wasn't that much, and now there's, it seems like 50,000 different channels I can subscribe to and just watch their content.
Yeah, sorry, and you'll notice that like HBO is a perfect example of one of these things that are not available to anybody unless they have not just a cable subscription but also an HBO subscription. And they've opened up HBO to go, so if you are subscribed to HBO, you can watch it anywhere. But for that exact reason, I'm not paying the premium of getting cable and then the premium on top of that of getting HBO just so I can watch it on my iPad. It doesn't make any sense.
That's a great segue to mobile. I mean, so what is the impact of mobile?
I mean, that's where the audience. There's 40% of the audience is watching it on their phones at this point. And I don't know what is defined as mobile, whether it's iPad or whether it's phone or both. But I mean,
it's a blurred line at this point. I mean, mobile, you look at something like Facebook that none of the investors were happy with the IPO when it came out. It went down to like 17, and then suddenly they announced, we're getting 40% mobile, and we're starting to monetize all those ads, and it immediately went up. Everybody's looking for mobile content, but I don't know. Again, I just think it's all the same. What's the difference if I'm watching it on my phone in my bedroom because I'm cleaning, or I suddenly go onto my 52-inch TV and watch it? It's the same. I'm still watching it.
Yeah, I have a quick question. How many here actually have televisions? Or let me rephrase that. Who does not have a television? So, wow, that's a big number for those of you that can't see.
It's like 10%.
Yeah, that's big, and that's what I think goes to your point. You have to define mobile because computers, phones, iPads, it's everywhere.
I see. For me, there is a difference between the mobile watching and the big TV watching because you can't share mobile. I'm in a relationship, so I can't watch any of these TV shows without the significant other there, and we're not going to huddle around like my phone.
Although, Dan, there's also AirPlay where I can log into something on my phone and throw it to my big screen TV.
Then it's not mobile anymore, in my opinion. That's just the device that's throwing it up there.
So then what's the... Yeah.
That's where it gets... I think that counts as a mobile view. That's where it gets weird. I'm watching... So somebody's watching my network on Roku. They're actually watching it through my web server. It's downloading from there, so therefore they're watching it on the web, but they're on the 52-inch TV watching it.
Sure, and that's assuming that like your specific show is available through that like provider and that machine that will be able to throw up to your TV, which is compatible with that. It's just
I think that's most now.
It's messy right now.
It also might be a monitor, not a TV. So then, how do we measure that?
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, why isn't my iPad just my remote control, where I can access every single network, I can access every single piece of content on my tablet, and I can throw it directly to my big screen TV? It's just a remote control at this point.
That's supposedly what Steve Jobs wanted, and that's what supposedly Apple's working
God
on.
rest his soul.
Yes, that's what Apple. That's supposedly what Apple's working on. Everybody's waiting for. Samsung's doing that right now, but obviously they're not as tied in as like an iTunes is. But they're working on it.
And the Google device that just came out, that's $35, plugs into the back of any
Right.
TV, and it does exactly
Which
that
is
as
the
well.
same as the $59 Roku box, which is, you really get. We've been talking about cutting the cord for probably 2-3 years on these kind of panels, and I remember I went to a TV thing, and all the cable guys were like, "It's never going to happen. These numbers are fake. These numbers are fake." That was like 3 years ago. It's totally happening. A lot of people see no reason to have cable anymore. And 5 years from now, I don't think we're going to be talking like this. I don't think there's going to be cable. I don't think there's going to be a difference.
With a lot of these networks where you have no commercials, what the heck are advertisers doing?
That's the question.
Well, that's what needs to change. So what you have now is you have network TV that still has a very archaic, outdated system of watching Nielsen ratings. But what's happening now is business in Hollywood, and you guys are there, so jump in. Business in Hollywood is now going into the web world, and they are now trying to take that model of counting ratings or counting hits and apply the same principle. So you might have a fantastic show that has 1 million hits once a week for 18 episodes to many, many months, but you might have a fantastic show that had 8 million hits one day, and then you do nothing to get that audience back. Right. You're going to get more from the business of Hollywood because you have more hits, but you have a sustainable show. So why are you?
That's been the problem for like the last 2 or 3 years of what numbers are real, what numbers aren't real, what live numbers are real, what numbers aren't real. Because I'm on the front page of Ustream, suddenly I get 20,000 views on my show. Is that real views? How many people are actually in the chat room? And nobody's quite figured out how to get the exact analyzing numbers down. What's real, what's not real. A YouTuber who's got 1 million subscribers, but next thing you know, you find out those kids are 12-year-olds who, anytime you put an ad up, hate you. Like, that's you're selling out. And then they actually hate the sponsor who thought they were getting 1 million views. I'll say it's a gold rush right now without that much gold.
I think there are two pieces to that question. There's, first of all, you've got your audience that's online that's mostly 12 to 18-year-olds, and they're exclusively online. So anybody, my babysitter, sorry, I don't have a babysitter, my daughter's babysitter, she doesn't watch TV at all. And for any of the audience out there who's ever had a babysitter, like she's 22. That doesn't make any sense. That's all. When I was a babysitter, that's all that I did was watch TV, and the kid could do whatever he wanted to do. So the fact that like the audience right now is being trained to not be watching television in the terrestrial way, the way that all of us grew up watching television, it means that the change is happening. And when those are the people with the buying power in 5 to 7 years, in 7 to 10 years, then the advertising dollars are going to drastically increase and go towards the internet even further. The other thing that we're doing is a lot of branded integration, where very much like what television was in the early days in the 50s, when you would do brought to you by Procter & Gamble and brought to you by Dove soap. It's the same type of thing now, where you've got presenting sponsors for shows, you've got the product itself integrated into the actual marketing in an organic way. Delivering somebody specifically a commercial is a very tough thing to do. You can still do it. There's the Old Spice commercials, which I think are a very successful commercial campaign because it's also content. And if you can make your brand content and make your brand something that people want to engage with, then it becomes a monetizable, engaged audience with your brand. And it's a lot easier to sell them the product because they think you're cool.
And I think it starts to move away from even the show. This is something I saw yesterday. Mashable posted an article. Someone had bought Box.com had bought the car from Breaking Bad, Jesse Pinkman's car, and they went all around New York City, like throwing out bags of like blue meth candy.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. The car gets sold. And this was all like a promo for Box.com, and everyone wrote up about it, and it's like tangentially related to Breaking Bad, and like this isn't going to be a commercial you'll see during the show, or even like during its run on Netflix. But people are finding like weird, odd ways to like get in on advertising with those.
So, and like with brand integration, I know like YouTube asks YouTubers just to like, is there a product placement here?
Not anymore. That's actually just recently changed, where you're not obligated to pay YouTube back on any branded integration. That's yours to do. They're still going to advertise on the front of it.
They weren't asking you to pay them. They were just asking you to say so because the government was demanding full disclosure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty recent. Yeah, it is. I mean, YouTube has kind of opened up the floodgates to allow you to do a lot more things now than they were even 6 months ago.
I mean, yeah, and the interesting thing with the brand integration, like we were trying 4 years ago, saying it's 1950s TV, and nobody got it. They're like, how many views do you have? And brands are now starting to come to us realizing that they can help get those views. If you have a good show, we have a good show. We have a very strong fan base for the show called Stupid for Movies. And in the last 3 weeks, we have a salesperson now who's actually bringing in some brands. They want to see this big number, and we're like, we don't have that big number. We have a very loyal fan base who buys things. And brands are now starting to come and going, okay, we can, like in the 50s, when that's why soap operas were invented. They were a soap, product, essentially. So their brands are starting to realize, like, oh, we can help you guys get views as well. Not just how many views you got. That's what they started to do for the last 2 or 3 years, was how many views you got. We'll throw something in there, whether it's a brand or whether it's an ad, which, again, doesn't help. Like you were saying, it doesn't help brand the show. It doesn't help bring in viewers. It's just an ad in the middle, which annoys people.
So can you think of a really great example of brand integration and how it worked?
We've done a few, and I mean, not to toot our own horn, but we did a show with Reggie Watts called Ultimate Ears, and it was about a Logitech boombox that he, who is a well-known comedian in the music space, basically took around this box and asked the question, can music get you laid? Can music start a party? And those were the various episodes. Can music get you high? And he would take this box and he would turn it on, and then we would produce, obviously, things around that to make those things happen. Nobody knows that that's an ad. Nobody gets a sense that that's an integration, other than the fact that, oh, Reggie does music and this is a cool thing that he also uses. Now it becomes a cool thing that I would like to use.
Again, that stuff's it's I always go back to it's pre-production creative. To just be a vlogging YouTuber and then go, you guys should totally check out this brand, doesn't help anybody. You have to be creative about it. You have to develop something around it, and you have to be smart with it.
But you're also developing your audience, because you have a great fan base. Those guys will follow you anywhere. Maybe not to another show, but maybe to a Comic-Con or something. Yep. They'll follow you. Yep. And that's what's important. With web, what's being done more is engaging the audience. They feel like they're a part of an experience, especially if you're live tweeting, which a lot of network is doing now, a lot of shows are doing now. They feel like they're part of that experience, and that's why it's totally different. Yeah,
on our show, for example, our Stupid for Movie show, we go live. We've been, we're a live show, but then it's on video on demand through Roku or iTunes or whatever. During the show, we built segments for the audience. We didn't just go, there's somebody in the chat room, and we're asking a question. We built something called Buy, Rent, or Burn. Name a name of a movie. We'll tell you if you should buy it, rent it, or burn it. Basically, 10-second review. We had a celebrity would come on and talk about a movie they think you need to see. We tell you a week before, watch it. They come on that next week, and it becomes a roundtable discussion through Skype and Google Phone that they call in and talk. It's an audience show that brings people in, not just, what did they say in the chat room? Like, I don't think that helps anybody.
But
be creative.
What you've done, which is pretty impressive, is that's iconic. Which it's new and it's fantastic, and congratulations, but that's building an audience. Forget about building a brand.
And honestly, for filmmakers, it's intellectual property. If you're building a show, if you're building something, own your intellectual property. Don't just go, I have a movie review show. Everybody has one. So now companies that came to us that wanted to syndicate the show, they wanted to buy the show. I go, you can syndicate it. They like that we had intellectual property, and plus when they buy it from me, I still own the trademark and copyright of the intellectual property. So there's still money there.
And filmmakers want you. They want to be on your show.
Right.
The thing that you said that was very interesting, which still applies, web, broadcast, cable, celebrity. You still need that kind of celebrity before you get the Microsofts to sponsor you.
Interestingly, from the brands, yes. From the views online, no. Like, if you bring in, unless you're talking a huge celebrity, if you bring in a celebrity, somebody you think's a B player, if they're not web celebrity, a lot of people on the internet don't care. A lot of them aren't following in. But if you bring somebody...
It's not even that they don't care. They don't know them.
They don't know.
Sarah Silverman...
age-wise,
how many people in this room know who Sarah Silverman is? Everybody. Yeah. How many people in the chat room? Is there a chat room? None. No
Nobody
people in the chat room
Point
knows who
proven.
Sarah Silverman is. I did it. So it is. The internet doesn't know these same
They
traditional
don't.
celebrities that the rest of us would know.
But the
from
brands do.
Yes.
And the brands then, you bring in a celebrity, and we've done it, and they're like, oh, how come the views? Did they tweet? Yeah. But guess what? The kids who are online 24/7 aren't watching it. The adults who will catch the show at some point maybe aren't going online live. It's not nobody does appointment viewing unless it's sports. So our live shows, we get a big audience, but we definitely get bigger posts. But the people who are in the audience are a younger audience who are online all the time.
Well, and to bring it back to convergence for a second too, you mentioned did the celebrity tweet, and a celebrity, people on the internet are also they're platform devout. If somebody is on Twitter, that's where they get their content from. If they have to go off Twitter to get additional content, that's an extra step that they may not be willing to take. They understand that Twitter is, I'm going to read all of my feed, I'm going to be done in 10 minutes, I don't need to go do anything else. Same goes with YouTube. If they're on YouTube and they're engaged in the YouTube platform, that's where they live. And the celebrity thing is interesting because there are YouTube celebrities that can drive traffic in that platform. They can't drive traffic very well off the platform. Same goes with Twitter. There are people who can tell you to follow somebody else, and you'll get a ton of followers. But if they tell you to go to a different website, that's an extra click.
Which is when you're developing a show, what we think of. So we have a live show. YouTube wanted us to use their platform. We were one of the first live shows the day they started live. They asked us to do our show a day earlier so we can sort of launch their live platform a year and a half ago. But it turns out a lot of our fans are on Facebook. Ustream has Facebook integration. You click it, you can watch it right on your Facebook page. YouTube does not. So we started to realize, like, it doesn't help us to be on YouTube Live, even though it seems like it should. It brings up our YouTube subscribers, but nobody's watching. So when you're developing a show, if you're doing something like that, know where your audience lives. Like, you're right. Twitter does not necessarily go to Facebook, does not necessarily go to YouTube. It becomes pain, and I always say 20% of doing a show is the show, and producing it 80% is post-show marketing.
One of the things that happened recently, Game of Thrones sort of bragged about being one of the most pirated shows ever. And I'm wondering if you could address the whole peer-to-peer network issue. I know there are companies out there that are trying to bring advertising through peer-to-peer sharing. There are conferences on peer-to-peer networks. What do you guys think?
I think there's a real void with a younger generation watching anything because they don't get IP, they don't get intellectual property, they feel that it's online, therefore it's free because they're watching it for free. And that model needs to change a little, not to watch it for free, but how do we protect our content? How do we do that? And no one has an answer. We've watched the music industry, spiral down and lose control. We're watching movies. A movie is made. I'm from New York, and we can boast, if you think this is a boast, but there's a movie theater in Kips Bay that has been recorded that it is the largest source of pirated movies, period. Wow. They go in, they have a camera in their little leather jacket, they get the infrared hearing because they say they're hard of hearing, they plug it into the camera, they've got flawless sound. Wow. They may have a head bobbing in front of the frame, but they've got flawless sound. They do it for 30 minutes at a pop. I believe it's 30 minutes at a pop, and then someone else comes in and takes over, and there's a guy in the corner that's waiting for it because there's the fine is less if you're only recording a certain amount. Yeah. And then within 2 hours of the movie's finish, that first day release, it's in Russia or it's in China, and hundreds of thousands of copies are made already. I mean, it is a phenomenal problem that we have. Billions and billions of dollars every year is lost, but we don't know how to educate this YouTube or the Twitter generation at how that is illegal. That's a whole different panel, but...
Well, I mean, I also wonder if the fact that when I grew up, movies were $7 to go see, and now it's $15 to go see, and so there's a supply and demand factor there too. Of if I can get paid to watch this movie, well, that's way better than me having to pay out the wazoo for it. And piracy is a big problem. And online there is kind of digital watermarking is a big thing. YouTube does a pretty good job of content ID and flagging things that don't belong to the person who uploaded it. But certainly selling DVDs and selling Blu-rays is a whole different game, and it is a big problem.
It's getting a little bit better all the time, though. I feel like every year I pirate a little less and a little less because you find because you find like the little like nooks and crannies of ways to watch. I mean, on demand has gotten so much better than it used to be, and even advertisers are finding ways to not really let you fast forward as fast through those commercials on demand. So it's still worth it to them. But like you have to find that stuff. Now that there are so many, there's like 10 different ways to get your content. If you're just a kid that's used to downloading everything or seeing it like in one or the other, you might not be aware of all the options you have.
But that's
super popular.
That's exactly the problem, is that the audience that is 12 to 18, part of the reason they don't watch TV is because everything exists for free through these peer-to-peer networks, is that you can torrent anything. Software is a major part of that problem, too. All of it is free to anybody who doesn't realize that it's against the law. And so, I think that educating people that it is against the law, and we've started to see piracy commercials in front of every movie that we see, I think that's gonna help some, but there's still gonna be some element of the black market. That's how I got my baby I mentioned earlier. So
is this piracy market changing how networks approach the distribution of their content?
Well, there's the Netflix thing. Netflix is actually studying who's pirating what in order to figure out what they want to buy next. So therefore, it's influencing it directly. And Netflix is what's going on? Netflix is making those great decisions because they saw how many people are just trying to download the whole seasons of Arrested Development, and therefore going after those rights, and seeing what film to stream next, and to go after hardcore because everyone's trying to download it.
The interesting thing, the start of this is HBO will not let you download Game of Thrones anywhere. And if they did, I think people would buy it. And that's what a lot of the studies have shown. Why is it so pirated? And people are like, because I can't get it anywhere. Can't watch it anywhere unless I have HBO, unless I have cable. I can't even get it on iTunes. And I think people are willing to pay, especially iTunes. Kids who use iTunes, do they? I don't know. The studies show, but they are willing to pay because it's a click. It seems like you're not paying because your credit card's already in there.
Because it's your parents' credit card, so it's
parents' credit card. Yeah. So I think that's the problem too. That networks, something like HBO, has to understand they have to allow their content to be seen, and they can make money on it, but they don't. They're very, stuck where they are.
One of the issues becomes talk about Game of Thrones or that DVD set. They're not that profitable anymore. So it's more important we keep talking about HBO, but it's more important to one of the premium channels to get the subscribers, because DVD sales they're not there anymore. Is it because of pirating? I don't think so. I think people are just doing this because they can.
Could they have gotten those sales in digital?
Yeah, but that's also, the iTunes thing is nice. I don't have cable anymore. I'm just using kind of iTunes and Netflix. But if I wanted to watch a show, it's still $30 to download an entire season. And so if I'm going to download an entire season, it doesn't. I would rather, it's better for me to just have DVR and pay for the cable and record it. So I think that there is still that convergence that will continue to happen, where you have to find that sweet spot of supply and demand, where what the cost is makes sense for people to do it and still increases your bottom line, because there are 60% of the population who's over the 18-year mark who is still paying for cable and the whole nine. And then if you can just attract the rest of those people and give them some value for something that isn't going to cost them their entire allowance in order to watch, then maybe they won't steal it from
We're at such like an oddball in-between area right now that I'm using my parents' HBO Go Pass. Like, they don't know what to do with it. They have HBO, and I'm using it. But I didn't realize I'm not alone. I saw a College Humor sketch about this, and it was a popular one. And I was like, damn, this is something that a lot of people are doing. They're all borrowing each other's passes. And then I thought about it, and yeah, actually, me and my brother he lives in Boston, I live in New York. We're sharing a Netflix as well. So we're all trying to cope in our own way to try to get on board and stay one step ahead of piracy.
Aren't these guys great? So I have one more question for them, but then we'd love to have you be able to ask some questions. So think of questions you'd like to ask, and I would like to ask, when you look into the crystal ball and look 5 years down the road from now, what's happening in this great convergence?
Like I said, I think I think the networks will become a la carte. The network NBC will be the same as Netflix. They'll have their shows. You can pop it on your Roku box or Apple TV at that point, or Samsung or whatever. That's how I see it. I see it as you got your TV, your remote now is going to be choosing your network very much like Roku is now with independents, but more with the networks. And again, cable networks are already doing that on Roku. In terms of the news networks, they're already doing that. And I think that's what's going to happen in terms of what happens to networks. Again, TV, monitor, it's a screen. There's not a difference. I think because the web, if you call it web TV or whatever you call it, House of Cards, that's the model. It still costs $100 million to make, so independents who are all excited and hoping they're the next House of Cards, it was still a professional showrunner. It was still David Fincher. It was still Trigger Street is a big production company. I think everybody needs to be realistic if they're an independent filmmaker, and it's the same thing. I did independent films and my own shows back in the 90s to be seen by whether it was TV or when I went into a meeting pitching a show or trying to get a job. Oh, it's sort of a nice calling card, and I think people need to be realistic with that as well. It's still a calling card.
No, you're absolutely right, and you said it, quality. It's got to be quality. I mean, people forget that because we're so used to doing it with our home cameras that we forget about the quality. My hope is that network would still be here. I don't think network is going anywhere, but I think the business model has to change. I think the rating system, every year we hear, oh, we're going to change our rating systems now and DVR numbers are going to count. Well, they're still struggling through the mud to try to figure out how to make that work. I hope that they make it work, and then there's a nice little balance between what's happening online, mobile, and network.
I feel like all the networks are trapped in a mansion, and one of them will die. And I keep waiting for the first domino to drop in that secession, and then everyone will just get mixed up into a frenzy, and things will really change because something happened.
That, I wouldn't say the network would die, but a lot of the shows are suffering. Now, look at a show like Fringe,
right,
which if you loved Fringe, you loved Fringe. If you didn't like Fringe, you didn't like Fringe, but it was one of the first network shows that had a whole transmedia component. We had a little online village. We had things hidden in our content, which was the first
little flash after the episode.
Right, that I know of, the first network show that was actually doing that had a trying to build its audience. But the reality, 5 years later, it didn't work. It should have worked, but it didn't work. So I think the network's not going to die, but individual shows that are unique and outside the box, that's what's suffering. And
related to that, for transmedia, what I said earlier, when you're making your own independent stuff, what's great about this new transmedia and everything that's going on, and everybody needs content and YouTube funding content, there's a lot of buyers. So, I been on panels for years, and every time I was like, I don't know how to make money in the web, just do it. Just try. And now it becomes, if you got a good idea, there are people looking that need content that don't know how to make it, that literally YouTube gave them a couple $1 million and they're not sure how to make it for cheap. And that's where people like you guys, if you have films in here, that's where it happens. So that my production company was all live, but for the last year, we've been selling shows or producing shows and making money, good money doing it, just because these companies now don't know how to make that transmedia, don't know how to speak to the online community. And I came from TV, but I know the online community at least for the last 5 years. So you have all these TV guys that are like, I don't know how to do this. We'll hire a company that does, or filmmakers that do. And so it's really important what you guys are doing as well.
Yeah, and I think that in 5 years, what we really see is the distribution change. Is that Time Warner, Comcast, Cox, your major DirecTV, we're no longer getting. They turn up the pipes. Everybody gets super fast internet, and that's what their businesses end up becoming. And then they can deliver television shows directly through those exact pipes instead of having to pay for and that all of those cable providers, their boxes become essentially what an Apple TV is, which allows you to stream directly there, which allows you still access to some of these other premium networks that they hold on to through sweetheart deals, and that some of these other minor networks, the Ions of the world, the Bios of the world, they go exclusively to the web. And then the production model, I think, also changes, where we end up seeing, like, for example, at Jash, where we're talking to a number of different distributors about making television shows for television budgets, but we would still make them the same way we make our internet shows, and then our margins increase drastically and allows us to actually become a functioning studio where we have capital to spend on other things instead of hand to mouth for each individual show that we can possibly sell.
And what you're saying, your distribution then becomes global. So what really has to change, and what is starting to change, is domestic distribution, television domestic distribution, because whether it's transmedia or whether it's global now, and you push a button and you're being seen all over the world.
Yeah, and I mean, right now through all the cable networks that we have, it's only in America. You can bounce your server, and I can pick up live Major League Baseball games from an international server, but I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do that. But it's all out there right now, and if the audience numbers are dropping, then we have to open up the floodgates to the rest of the audience of the world in order to make our content available, and then be able to sell at a higher CPM, because you got more eyeballs.
I also think it's going to become a lot easier in the next 5 years to take content from different sites like your College Humor, Funny or Die, YouTube, and watch them all together streaming nonstop. Because right now you have to search and find everything. It doesn't come to you. And there needs to be a solution for that, because there's enough content throughout the day that you could come home and just sit down for 3 hours and watch the best of the web, and there's no way to do that right now, so that's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a key point also, is just how you find things online. Then in 5 years, right now there's 100 hours of content uploaded every minute to YouTube, and that and that number is up from last year, which was 48 hours per minute. So in 5 years, if we're looking at that kind of exponential change, the amount of content that exists is not enough for any person to ever be able to sift through and find. And so I agree, there has to be some kind of curation that goes online in order for people to really be able to find the stuff that's worth watching.
So on that note, let's turn it to the audience for some questions. The way this will work is I'll point to you with a hand up. Give us your question. I will repeat it so the people at home online can hear the question, and then we'll roll with an answer. So the question is, do you guys see each other as competing with each other?
I would say that it's less competition and more just you want to find what audience is perfect for your specific grouping of content. And it may be a different audience, and if the audiences are totally in line with each other, then it might be competition. But there's so many different types and factions that you can split our whole country into and the whole world into that I don't find it to be so.
No, I mean, I did my own company. Then for the last year, I ran a multi-channel network. I was a head of production, but we were doing very different things. It was like a visual effects thing, so I still did all my stuff on the side. AJ worked with me on that. AJ now has gone to Jash. I go into Jash. I'm consulting over there as well for their live stream, and plus I bring in pitches to them. So it's always better to work together. Like, something may work on my network, and I don't like to consider myself a network because you run into the problem when if I am a network, I now have to find my advertisers. I have to figure out how I'm making money in this space. I figure out how to do brand. To me, it's much simpler to go, I'm going to sell some shows right now and let them figure that out, and I'm just going to pay for my production, pay for my people. So, yeah, I think we're all just learning from each other. I don't think it's really competition so much.
Yeah, and I think the lines are I agree with you. It's confusing. The lines are blurred. There's a network, there's a channel, there's a platform, and all of those things are also converging. So, for example, Jash, youtube.com/Jash is a channel. Jash is also a network that encapsulates Jash and Ba and Sarah Silverman and Reggie Watts and Tim and Eric. YouTube is a platform that's probably more competitive with Dailymotion, or that would be a more apt comparison between the two than what we do. He is a content provider. So there's a lot of buzzwords that I just said that all mean the exact same thing. And so I get that it's confusing, but ultimately I think there are enough eyeballs in the known universe for everybody to have their fair share.
So I think the answer was sort of, but not really.
Yeah, we could even partner together. That's like we could potentially be working together, or we could be focused in totally different areas.
And sorry, all those. The partnership is a key component to it as well, is because the entire internet space is built on this person supporting this person, the Pinterest person supporting your show, the Tumblr person supporting this, and all of that is how you really build your audience. It's not through putting out the most amazing piece of content, because without a marketing plan, which is a key component of any startup show at this point, you're never going to get anybody to see it.
Right here. So, so So the question is around what business models do you see that exist that work, and I would assume are replicable, right? Okay.
Honestly, in my case, like I said, I was trying this for 3 or 4 years, and then I came to the realization I'm going to sell shows to other people who have money. That right now is the model that works. Meanwhile, I'm building up my own show. So even if I have a show on Nerdist, it's going to reference back to some of my other shows that I'm independently doing. So I make those sort of deals of, hey, my production card's going to be at the end, right? You're going to reference something on that show. Maybe I'm going to bring one of my hosts of a show that I'm funding myself to build that. So my model right now is I'm trying to sell shows to different networks that have money, different channels or networks, whatever you want to call them, and then still bring that back to my production company. So I got hired to do Will Smith After Earth because I worked with these guys on I did the X Factor live pre-show. They then saw another show that I did on one of my YouTube shows, loved that, came to me with the Will Smith thing. So, again, it's a calling card meets selling shows, and there's a lot of people looking for content right now that have some okay money. It's not TV money, but it's decent money. I mean, that's on their end. So I sell the show to them. If they can sell advertising. If they come to me and say, hey, we got an advertising, we want to do some brand stuff, great. According to our contract, I get a portion of that. Sounds great. What do you want us to build into that show? And my company, I'm taking pitches from outside just like I would when I was doing TV. I'm partnering up with people. When I was in TV, I had the ability to get those meetings, so then independents would come to me. I got a great idea for a show. We do some kind of split of ownership and, a fair deal that gets the show sold because, in the TV world, and this is sort of the same in the web world, how I'm treating it is I have those connections to make it happen, and that's sort of how I'm looking at it.
I think that as an individual series, the business model for making your series successful and profitable is a tough one. But Mike has mentioned this before, that it is about making a successful calling card. In the internet space, there are a number of different ways that you can be profitable. I think that advertising is obviously a big part of that, but at the same time, there's only so much money that exists in the advertising world, and Google owns 98% of it. So what we're doing is 3 parts. We're doing a creative ad agency side of the business where we're doing brand integrations for commercial money. We're doing a content distribution business where we're selling directly to other distributors for kind of higher budgets than what YouTube would allow. There's also a multi-channel network business, which is aggregating a number of channel providers and then being able to package those together and sell them to advertisers, like what Brian Robbins just recently did with Awesomeness TV, where he packaged together hundreds of channels that all hit the tween market and said, everybody who's 12 to 17 is watching this market. We're getting 350 million uniques a month, or whatever crazy number it was, and then DreamWorks paid him $33 million to advertise all of their Pixar movies in front of it for every single time that they've got a movie coming out.
Can I ask a question? So let me ask you guys what you think about a show and a PayPal component to that show. So you watch the show and then you click on it and you donate. Did you start that way? You did?
We did some of that with Stupid for Movies. So we initially was that. We were going to try a Kickstarter thing. But yeah, it was like, you guys like it, donate. And we also put up an Amazon affiliate. And we made a lot of money on that during Christmas time because we were a movie review show. We're recommending this movie, and we had a buy, rent, or burn thing, which I mentioned, which is like 10 DVDs. So in a show, we probably had 15 to 20 movies we'd recommend or do not watch. So people would buy those DVDs on Amazon immediately. Like and we had it up on Ustream. We put the little link down there. It was on the website. During the show, we mention it, and that you get a lot. And I know Corolla makes a lot of money on that too. And a lot of the money of like podcasters they make of like go to 1-800-Flowers and put in Adam. They make a lot of money off those references.
Yeah, and I think that the other part of that question is how effective is crowdsourcing and really being a big part of any kind of monetizing game plan of yours. And I think that crowdsourcing is a really tough nut to crack because there's a lot of it. A lot of people have their web series out, and a lot of people are asking for money. But ultimately, that's not a way to that's not a revenue stream. That's a startup seed money, if anything, or I've seen people use it as finishing money as well. But I don't think that it's a really effective revenue.
I want to say one last thing about like getting a web series off the ground and trying to make it successful right off the bat. I would say an important thing is not putting all your eggs in one basket, not just focusing on this one web series. Continuing to do things on the outside that work, but still have the sensibility of your series, and throwing those out there, and then one of those might take off, and then you can point people to the series. A good example of this was a friend of mine, Dane Bowe, who was doing sketch comedy. Eventually, like he just would do odd sketches every week until he stumbled upon The Annoying Orange, and that's something where it actually like some fans like this. I'll do another one. And he had been, some of his sketches had turned into recurring series, but this one really took off. And then suddenly, like that was really the top thing. And he had all these other like minor hits that he could lean back upon, and he could have like put his whole production value like into the first 3 sketches and tried to make them continuing. But I think just something about branching out.
So, I've seen so many people like they did a web series 3 years ago. They're still talking about it. They're still marketing it. I'm like, and they're doing now. I'm trying to raise money for the 3rd season. I'm like, it didn't hit, and it literally didn't hit. You can look on YouTube, and they've got like 300 views. I mean, and to me, it's like you don't want to, you can't be mean and say it, but like do something else. It didn't work. For whatever, I get it, and you're passionate about it, and you love it. And it was like, but guess what? Your next thing is going to be just as passionate, and maybe it'll hit.
So on that, we're going to close the panel. This was great, guys. Thank you very much. Let me encourage you to use social media this week. Take photos of crowds, hashtag ITVFest, and feel free to come up and meet the guests.
Thank you.
So distracting.